So we must do two things, two great things together to encompass that enormous new view that lies before us, but to encompass it within the framework of science, to see it within the whole categorical framework of science, and to see that these two are not separate, but that they are wedded. The bigness of the idea, the newness of the idea, the greatness of it is one with the structure of science, the structure of being itself. Well, we began this week by taking the days of creation, that creative order from mind to love, and we saw that it was, in a way, an ascending way, that it was that pattern which has patterned the whole evolution of time, that has patterned the belief structure of the 1,000-year periods. Actually, that picture of the days of creation is giving us a microcosm view of the whole ascent of consciousness. It is the seed plot for the entire ascent of consciousness. It must therefore be, in a way, a microcosm of the model of being as a whole. It must somehow indicate within itself the model of being as a whole. Don't we have a new respect for these days of creation this week? That they are self-embedding within themselves not only the 7, but the 4. And we are going to see not only the 7 and the 4, but they are indicating or pointing to the levels of consciousness. And so I'm going to say to you what I said on the West Coast, namely that I don't ever want to hear anyone put down those days of creation in my presence. Because they are exquisite. They are the exquisite pattern. So let us pursue the opening statement that I've just made about those days in connection with the model of being. We have really those days appearing at this point, do we not? In the Word, at the point of Christian Science. That implicate in the deep structure law of the word order are these days of creation. So the days of creation are within the model of being, and the model of being is implicated in the days of creation. That is, pattern within pattern, and pattern within pattern. What did we have with the 5th, 6th, and 7,000-year periods? Let's focus on those periods especially. And we saw that in the 5th, 6th, and 7,000-year periods, symbol and idea is one. Symbol and idea is one at each of those points. So we have in the 5th 1,000-year period that experience of Jesus was when Jesus came, and he gathered those first 4 days into one. Into one, didn't he? He came at the point of life. And as John Dorley always said, it is at that point of life that the days of creation become numerals of infinity. It is a change in standpoint. Jesus came at that point where he could gather up the first 4 days into one. And I think he was indicating that when he said, don't you say there are yet 4 months and then cometh the harvest? It's right now. Those 4 are one. Those four are right now. They are timeless being, so that everything is there now to harvest. His focus was on demonstration, on a certain kind of demonstration, on demonstrating life, capital L, as life, small l. Demonstrating life as the abundance of life, as the multiplication of life, as healing, as the overcoming of sin, sickness, and death. He exemplified the individual handling of individual, collective, and universal problems. He showed us the application, you see, of being, the applied sense of science. He symbolized the idea. You see, we have Jesus being the Christ. It was that oneness of symbol and idea. He was the Christ. And so the whole accent of his mission in that 5,000-year period was actually on the level of Christian Science, was hinting to or pointing towards or implicate within that 5,000-year period was the level of Christian Science. So the level of Christian Science is the fulfilling. It's the real fulfilling in science of that 5,000-year period. Then when we come to the 6,000-year period, we have something different. We still have symbol and idea one. But here the symbol is principle and idea. The symbol is science and the idea of the system of science. So we have the symbol of the synonymous terms and their ideas, principle and idea, science and its system. What is that? Scientific metaphysics. Scientific metaphysics, a system of ideas symbolized in its highest degree by the textbook, by the Christian Science textbook. So the symbol here is now science and the idea is science. That in the 5,000-year period where you had Jesus as the symbol and idea of the Christ, or as Christ Jesus, that now that sense of Christ Jesus becomes the Christ science. It is made collectively and universally possible. That which was only an individual demonstration in the 5,000-year period now through scientific metaphysics is made collectively and universally possible. And so we see that really this is exactly what we find on the level of absolute Christian Science. We find the oneness of the synonymous terms with their ideas. As though the 6,000-year period is indicating or pointing to that level of absolute Christian Science and focusing on that level. Until at the close of that 1,000-year period, as we draw nearer to the primal elements of that 1,000-year period, nearer and nearer to truth and love, to the highest aspect of that 1,000-year period, that we begin to feel everything turning over to the new 1,000-year period, the 7,000-year period, which we are already beginning to touch, and which will come upon us more and more and more. And at that point, the symbol is the synonymous term, and the idea or ideas go out. Ideas go out. So the sense of ideas as a focus goes out when we touch the 7,000-year period, and this is why the symbol of the 7,000-year period, the symbols are capitalized terms only, and there are no ideas in the model of being, no ideas explicitly expressed in that model. They are implicate. Everything is there, implicate in the capitalized terms. So that in divine science we touch the oneness of being. And the 7,000-year period, therefore, is all hinting to the age of divine science, of ultimate simplicity of the symbols, of ultimate abstraction, of the coexistence of principle and idea as one, as principle including within itself its own idea. The idea is implicate in that consciousness of the principle. And as that 1,000-year period goes on, and we know that there are many hundreds of years ahead of us to see how mankind will experience this, how the change of consciousness will take place. We know that it is not going on through the proselytizing efforts of single individuals going out and trying to save the world, but that the salvation is through the change of consciousness, the change of the whole field, the leavening of the whole field, because of the seed within itself that will gradually turn the whole thing over. And that can happen really at any time, at any time. Just reminds one again of that 100th monkey story, which you all know, that just one monkey can change the whole species, that information, that change in consciousness can affect every member of that species without ever coming in contact with that individual member. That individual member may have lived centuries before, or may live now, may be on another continent. It doesn't matter. This is the way consciousness works. This is the way the calculus works, the way the Christ works with its seed within itself to change the whole and leaven the whole. And so it will leaven the whole and bring out that absolute perfectibility of man where there is no impediment to bliss, no impediment to that absolute perfection. And after those 7,000-year periods, we see that there is not an 8,000-year period so much, but an 8th day. There is an 8th day consciousness where the symbols disappear entirely. And we just have being. It's just being. It's just science itself. It's just the infinite one, which does not need to be symbolized anymore. Actually, it will be beyond science. It will be being itself. But we are looking at the form, the model of the 7,000-year period consciousness. And so for the 7,000-year period to depict that which will have no symbols, it must do it through its own grid. And its grid is the grid of characterizing everything by capitalized terms. And so it takes the highest aspect of that and says, that's the infinite one principle. One principle. But it is where everything is one. One, infinite one. The only I. The I am. Can you at all grasp now how those days of creation indicate to, point to, lead to, are leading everything to, in that ascending way, to all of the levels, to the complete fulfillment of that ascending way? I know it's a lot to grasp. It's a big concept. But it's worth going over, and perhaps if you have the tapes or have your notes and can sit quietly at home, take some time to think about what we've done this week, to ponder the bigness of the idea, and to see if you can see that within those days of creation, that pattern is already embedded, the fulfillment of the whole picture. And that the whole picture embeds within itself that pattern of the days of creation. Isn't it a marvel? Isn't it a marvel?